Good evening, Fair Trade. What's going on? Yes, it is a busy night in the cafe. I feel like I got to use my business voice on you guys right now. Teacher Jessie's up here. My name's Jessie. I'm the host and producer of this show. You'll see a couple of my co-hosts and producers here in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and get the show started tonight. We've got a full lineup. Chatterbox is a show we do here every week. It is a storytelling open mic, and these are true stories about your lives. And we have different themes every week. We post those online, on Facebook as well. So if you're on social media, follow us on all the places. It's Chatterbox AZ. So anywhere you're looking for social media, we're there. We got a lot of people in here tonight, guys. If you are telling, I would recommend you just yell at the crowd. I think that's fine. Another recommendation from Jared, our podcast producer, is please don't treat the mic like a stranger by talking into it like this. Because no one can hear you when you do that. Treat the mic like a lover is exactly what he said, but don't get saliva on the mic, because that's weird. So keep it close, but not too close. You see what I'm saying. We need to hear you, and if you're being recorded for the podcast tonight, and you guys didn't know we had a podcast? Cool, we have a podcast. It's called Chatterpod. We record that every other week. Jared produces that and puts that up on everywhere you listen to podcasts. So if you have questions about that, ask me or Estevan or Sammie after the show, and we will answer your questions. But we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road because we have a ton of people here. Our theme tonight is time travel. And with all our themes, you guys can interpret that literally or figuratively. So please take creative license with all of our themes. That's what they're there for. They're there to inspire you, not to inhibit your stories by any means. All right, so our first storyteller is a regular to this show. The reason why I have such amazing co-hosts and co-producers. Put your hands together for Alexis.
All right. So it really took me a minute to think of something that would fit this theme because I was like, I've never time traveled before. But then I got thinking about it, and I feel like in a sense, like, you know, everyone has these like grand dreams of like traveling to the past and like changing that one thing or going to the future and seeing what it's like. But on a much smaller scale with like the invention of time zones, all humans that travel are time travelers. So my biggest adventure was a couple of years ago. I went to Sri Lanka for 2 months. For those of you that don't know, Sri Lanka is a tiny country / island in the Indian Ocean that's just south of India. It's like could fit in Arizona like 4 times. It's very small. And I went there after I finished my master's degree for this like volunteer program for recent grads and college students, and was volunteering with special needs children and teaching English and just kind of like exploring the country. So Sri Lanka is a 12.5-hour time difference from Arizona. I don't know where that half hour comes from. It doesn't make any sense, and it was horrible. So all of my family and friends, for the most part, are in Arizona or like spread amongst the U.S. And so trying to connect with them was such a pain because it was like, I'm just waking up and people are going to sleep or people are going to bed and I'm just starting my day. But it actually kind of worked because it was just kind of like, oh, okay, have a good night. You have a great day. And surprisingly, because I still had Wi-Fi, so surprisingly Facebook Messenger became a really great asset for keeping in touch with people and like being able to video my family and everything like that. But like where the time traveling comes in is on my way home from Sri Lanka. So I flew on my way there, and on my way home, I connected via London. So from Phoenix to London, it's about a 10-hour flight. And then from London to Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka, it's another 11 hours. And it sucks so bad. Around like hour 6 on a plane, my body is just like, can we be done now? And I literally packed 4 different coloring books in my carry-on and like crayons and colored pencils, and just like was maybe a little excessive, but it's fine. So on my way home from Sri Lanka, I left. I don't remember what time I left, but I landed in London at like 8 o'clock at night. And I was by myself, and one of my friends had like gotten me a hotel room that was in Westminster so I could do some sightseeing the next day before I continued my journey to Phoenix. And so I was just like, this is so cool. I'm in London. I'm so fancy. I also haven't had hot water or air conditioning for the majority of the last 2 months, and then was staying in like a 4-star hotel in London. So that was really sweet. And I went and got like fish and chips because I had to, because I was in London. And then I was like, okay, well, it's getting dark and I'm by myself, so I'm going to go back to my hotel. And I took the longest shower and bath. It was amazing. And that was like one of the fancy hotels with like a white, like fuzzy robe and shit. So I was just like, this is so luxurious. And like, I'm sorry, ST, I know you hate it. And so like, I was like, I went to watch some TV and like fell asleep and was like, I set my alarm for a normal time. I think my flight was at like 2 or I had to be at the airport at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So I had like a day to explore and do what I wanted. And I woke up the next morning at like 4 a.m. and I was just like, I'm awake, because I think Sri Lanka to London is like a 4.5 hour time difference. And I had been living in Sri Lanka for 2 months. So I was just like, this is what time it is. It's 9 o'clock at home. And like, I tried to go back to sleep and my body was just like, this is not happening. And I was like, all right, we're just going to do it. So I got up, I got dressed and packed all my shit. And I was like, let's go explore. And so I was literally walking the streets of London at like 5 a.m. on a Sunday. And it was the coolest thing in the world. No one was out there. Like, I only had, like, I could use maps on my phone, but I couldn't actually like put in destinations because it just wasn't working. So I just had to like actually read the map, which was scary, but I did it. I made it here. I'm alive. So I was like using my map and I was like, I'm going to go see Buckingham Palace and it's going to be magical. And so I'm like walking and like, I didn't like realize that I was there yet, because since it was so early, there was no one there. And like the guards weren't even out yet. There was like one lone guard that was like inside the gate, like standing in front of the actual building. And so it like took me a second. And then there's these like plaques on the ground that like say where you're at. And I was like, oh my God. And surprisingly, it was also like a very sunny, clear, beautiful day in London, which my friends told me doesn't really happen. And so I have this like amazing photo of Buckingham Palace that I took with literally no one in front of it, no cars, no people. And it was one of the most surreal things. And so I like continued on my way and basically crossed off like all the tourist traps in Westminster. I got to see Buckingham. I got to see Big Ben and Parliament, and just kind of like exploring by myself and kind of see the city wake up. Because as I'm literally just walking all of these empty streets, and like I was walking through Hyde Park, and there was like this like, you know, Sunday pickup game of soccer happening of like people that actually live there as opposed to just tourists. And it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, just to feel like I had the whole city by myself and like figuring out how to navigate it, because directions have never been my strong suit. And I made it by myself. And like eventually I had to take like public transportation to get back to Heathrow and get on the last 10-hour leg of the journey back to Phoenix. And it literally took me like a month and a half to get over the jet lag, let me tell you. It was horrible. I never want to do it again, but also I really want to do it again. And that's my time traveling story. Sorry I screamed.
It's okay. I'll get over it. Give it up again one more time for Alexis. Hello, Chatterbox. My name's Estevan. I am your co-host here doing the thing. Alexis actually just reminded me how we became friends. One of the things I try to do with all my friends that I have is come up with like a story of a definitive moment that I'm like, oh man, that's when we became friends. Alexis and I could not remember how the hell we became friends, other than one day we just started hanging out. But it was while you were gone on Sri Lanka, we would Snapchat each other or message each other on Facebook, and that's how we got to know each other better. So when you came home, we just kind of like picked off like we were just old friends, and it was kind of cool. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of good people and good friends, we have another regular to the stage. Please help me welcome Pete.
Woo! What the fuck is up, Fair Trade? How's everybody doing? Thank you. Okay. I ask everybody and one person answers. That's okay. Time travel is the theme. Wish I could time travel to Friday at 5, but that's not possible, so we'll just tell my story and I'll get off this stage. Time travel, right? Now, more than ever, it's easier to time travel. We can get into this machine here and ask to see pictures from Prohibition, the Depression, the 60s, disco era, whatever. You can basically travel in time, in a sense, right? Which is interesting because we have all this technology and our attention span is so much shorter than it has been. We're so unimpressed by things. For example, I Googled Idaho wilderness. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but do yourselves a favor, because I had no idea that Idaho looked like this. When I thought of Idaho, I just thought of potatoes and people that say Idaho, 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 Idaho. That's what I think of when I think of Idaho. But Google Idaho wilderness because, you'll be greatly impressed. It's weird because we have all this technology, and we used to be blown away by people spinning plates on sticks, motion pictures. Like, people would have seizures at motion pictures, and now we Google things, are amazed, and then instantly forget it 5 seconds later. Pictures, for some people, are a way of time traveling. If I was to log on to MySpace, I don't know if you guys are old enough to know what that is, but it's a lot of pictures of me in high school turning things into my dick. I was really good at just holding things to my waist like it was my penis. So it's a lot of pictures of this. And I cringe at the thought of myself in high school. I just realized of how annoying and how much of an asshole I actually was. For my mom, time travel involves music. So whenever she plays the Gap Band or Parliament, she's going to talk to me about dancing back in the day and then ask me to clean the house, because that's cleaning music in my house. When she hears Fast Car by Tracy Chapman, it makes her cry every single time. She thinks of a friend that passed away, and it takes her back to a place in time. I also grow pretty nostalgic when I hear Superman That Hoe by Soulja Boy. Takes me back in time. Good times. Never got to Superman any hoes, but someday maybe. There's nothing that makes you feel like you're traveling in time like data technology. I had to explain to a young person at work what caller ID was. Like, not that your phone identifies the caller, but the actual plastic white box that was by your landline. I don't know if anyone remembers this. Some people might. You youngsters might not, but it changed the game. All right, that was the introduction to ghosting someone. That was the introduction to not picking up a call because your mom's on it. It was amazing. I remember going to people's houses and being like, "Oh shit, you're rich. You got caller ID." Like, whoa, who's calling? Like, that was the big thing to do back when I was a child. For me, though, time traveling, I connect a lot with cars. I grew up with cars. My dad bought and sold cars growing up just to make ends meet. He went from that to owning his own wrecking yard where it's 4 acres of cars, guts and all, right? Like, I could get in there and really look at cars. It used to be where it was like I could identify a car just by the taillights. I could identify a car by the wheels. I just got really good at it. And whenever you get into a car that was your first car, for example, you remember. When you see a car that's the same as yours, you get excited. I won't forget the sound that a 93 Nissan Sentra makes when the doors open. That ting, 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 that is soothing for me because that's the car my mom had when I was a child. My first car was a 73 Volkswagen Beetle. It was Barney purple, didn't have an engine, and I pulled it out of some